So in my 57 years, this is my little introduction for you, my 57 years of observing the lives of pastors' wives, I've come to admire them profoundly. I have sympathized with those who have struggled to come to terms with the wide array of expectations they often face in church. These expectations vary today more than ever before in history based on the location and sizes of the churches they attend, the ages of the children, for those who have children, and all of these ladies up here do, their work outside of the home, and their giftedness in ministry. Too many of us are stretched too thin these days, trying our best to be faithful in the home and in the workplace, even as we figure out what roles to play in church. We want to address these expectations and struggles tonight with the help of our expert panelists. And our hope and prayer for you is that these ladies will enlighten and encourage you as you prepare to join your husbands in their call to ministry, and for our female students as you prepare for ministry. So our panelists are well known to the Beeson community, but give me just a minute to introduce them to those who are new to our Beeson community. Jane Ellen Watkins, I'm going to go here, and is the mother of 2 college students, a daughter and a son, so she's a new empty nester. She's also a professional chorister for EWTN and works at Briarwood Christian School as an aftercare teacher. Jane Ellen is married to Davin Watkins, senior pastor of First Baptist Church in Pelham. Let's see, Naomi O'Reilly is in the middle. She's a pastor's daughter and a mother of 3 children, 2 boys and a girl. Previously at Hope Hall United Methodist Church, she and her husband, Matt O'Reilly, moved this summer to Birmingham, where Matt is the new senior pastor for Christ Church, Birmingham. And then last, at the end, is Lauren Brooks, mother of 3 daughters, planning a wedding with the oldest, helping her middle daughter apply to colleges, and driver's ed for the youngest. So she is a busy woman right now. She's a freelance copy editor for Stanford University and loves the outdoors. She is married to Joel Brooks, senior pastor of Redeemer Community Church here in Birmingham. So, and then I mentioned Carla Calvert, who's not here. All right, so this is the plan for the evening. We have about 50 minutes or so for discussion, and then at about 7:55, 8 o'clock, and Dia or somebody give me a heads up if I start going a little too long-winded, then I'm going to invite any questions from all of you to ask these ladies. But for starters, This is you have not been prepped for this one, so you just have to listen.
Pressure is on.
All right, so I want you to raise your hand. So this is just so that they can get a feel, the ladies can get a feel for you guys. So raise your hands if one of these experiences fits you. You grew up hoping to marry a minister, and that's exactly what happened. All right, here's the next one. You fell in love first, but knew as this was happening that your spouse was heading to pastoral ministry. Ooh, well, that was easy. All right, that's a first. So, and then the other one was that you met and married, began a career, and then they chose to go into ministry. All right, so let me hear from each of you how you became a pastor's wife. So what was the beginning process? Jane Ellen, can I start with you? Since you're
Just
host.
knew it. I wasn't going to make eye contact. I was like,
I'll mix it up later, but
okay, so Davin and I started dating in college. He was a freshman and I was a senior, so I robbed the cradle. But there was just like this immediate, you know how you just kind of know, you just know when it's the person. And I knew he talked about ministry. So I kind of knew from the beginning that he was going to be going into pastoral ministry. And he did some jobs in youth ministries during the summer in between college. So I got to do some ministry alongside of him then. But it was kind of something I always knew, like I just kind of slid into the role, like, I don't know, I wasn't like, oh my goodness, I'm going to be a pastor's wife or whatever. But I mean, I just slid into it. Now, I will have to say that my dad was not very excited about it. He was a little nervous about it because both my parents were the organist and the pianist at my church from the time I was a little girl on up until they retired. So they kind of had an understanding of the insides of ministry and I was totally green behind the ears. I had no clue what I was going to be going into. So I just kind of slid into that role. I don't know if that answers your
Yeah,
question.
no, that's great. All right, Naomi.
So my husband and I both went to Auburn and didn't know each other then. So we kind of lived in the same area and our paths, I'm sure, crossed, but we never really met. And then we got set up on a blind date. So my dad pastored, he's retired now, but he pastored a church, and it's a pretty large church. So someone that went to my church, she washed hair for the person that cut my hair. And so, long story short, anyway, Matt went to her too. So this lady was washing her hair. We must have been in there the same week, and she told him, "I want to set you up with my pastor's daughter." And I think he kind of knew like who my family was, and I have a sister, so he was like, "I thought she was married," and she said, "No, he has 2 daughters." And so she called me. And so he had just taken his first church and moved in, had just like 2 or 3 weeks before moved into a parsonage that was right next door to this lady's in-laws house. So that was kind of her connection to him, and and I was her pastor's daughter, even though I didn't know her. But anyway, so she was like, "I want to set you up." So she asked me if I would go, and I was like, "Okay." I thought he's a pastor, he's safe, he's not gonna, surely it's not gonna be bad. And so anyway, so we started dating, we hit it off and started dating. And then got married, actually less than a year later. So I've really been with him from the start. He had maybe preached 2 or 3 sermons right before we went on our first date. And so, and then growing up as a pastor's kid, it was kind of normal for me. I didn't, I kind of knew what to expect, sort of. It wasn't like a strange thing, like jumping in. It just felt kind of normal, so.
All right, Lauren, how about you?
So Joel and I were high school sweethearts, and but he felt the Lord's call in his life when he was 9. So he's always known that he was gonna, which is so funny because he was kind of wild. But anyway, so I remember distinctly a roommate in college asked me, "So do you feel called to be a pastor's wife?" Because everyone knew Joel wanted. We both went to the University of Georgia after high school. And then, so all of our friends knew he wanted to do ministry. And I remember this specific roommate asking me, "So do you feel called to be a pastor's wife?" And I was like, no. I was like, "But I feel called to marry Joel." We were engaged at the time. And so I think for me, it's been more about, feeling called to, he's the one that God brought into my life. And then I didn't really think too much about the whole pastor's wife part until later, so.
Well, we did not set that up, but that does bring the book that you all are receiving this evening, with the exception of Victoria's mother, who's sitting right there in the orange. She's also a pastor's wife, but I wanted her to come just and join us if she was free. But the book that I have as a gift for each of you this evening, she does talk about that. She was a pastor's daughter herself. It's a friend of mine. She was a student wife at Trinity many years ago when Doug and I were at Trinity, and she was invited to participate in the Trinity Wives Fellowship. And anyways, then she was preparing for being a missionary wife and a pastor's wife, and she talks about how she wasn't called to be a pastor's wife, but she felt called to be with her husband. And so understanding the role of, you are first, God's child, but you are first his wife.
Yes.
And the role that you get labeled doesn't have to define you, but let it be a blessing for you. But anyways, it's a fun read. And anyways, I just wanted to encourage you with that and pass it on. All right, so next question for these ladies. Sorry, I don't want to ramble. I want to hear from you. What are some unique blessings of having a ministry marriage? And Lauren, may I start with you? Mix it up, but not put Jane Ellen on the spot.
Unique, like you can't ever really go on a date or do anything fun on a Saturday night because he's all stressed out about Sunday morning. It's unique. Sorry, I'm not better at it. Okay, so you asked about blessings.
Yeah, is there a
About
unique blessing?
blessings. Okay, well, I think things like people have been very kind and generous to us, I think, because we are in ministry. And so we don't have a second home or a home in the mountains or the beach or whatever. And so people are very, I feel like, kind to say, hey, go use our cabin, or, things like that. And I thought I don't know that they would do that, otherwise. And our children, I think, have really benefited from that too. They've gotten a lot of really neat experiences, I think, because of the generosity of other believers in our church who know that otherwise our family wouldn't have those opportunities. So,
Naomi or Jane Ellen, would you like to answer that question?
Something that stands out to me is being able to, the chance for our kids to be involved in ministry with us willingly, like not that we're forcing them to do stuff, but so we have spent most of our married life living in parsonages. We are Global Methodist now, but we have been United Methodist, and so we have been a part of the itinerancy system, and so we've moved around a fair amount. But we've also we've lived in parsonages, which are usually beside the church. So the kids have just had a chance to, help set up chairs. Or my oldest, he's 14, but he is into like videography, and he does videos. He's actually building our church a new website. So, but he's, his skills have progressed, and but it's just, he working the soundboard or helping in the nursery, just whatever needs to be done, and they just get really excited about it. And so I think that like they just get a front row seat to ministry, and highs and lows of it, but they get real excited about helping. And the other thing I was thinking about is when you move somewhere, we have this like instant community. So we just moved to Birmingham 4 months ago, and we've been overwhelmed. I have Peyton's in our church, and she's one of the sweet friends that has just welcomed me, and our family's been so blessed. But we were talking about like if other people move and they don't have a church, like they're not the minister, they don't have this community to just like welcome them in, and they don't have a pounding, or they don't have they're not like, we got meals like twice a week for 8 weeks when we moved here this summer. It's just like overwhelmingly kind, and not everybody has that, and so that's a blessing, just the way that we have that community and people welcome us, and when we are new to the area. So,
All right, I'm going to ask. Yes, I'm going to get, but I want to come back in a second to living in a parsonage. So keep that one in mind. Jane
I just
Ellen.
want to share one.
Yes,
thing
please.
that just came up.
Yeah.
For me personally, the blessing that I have felt is the fact that my husband, besides the fact he's a pastor, he studies God's word like on a regular basis, and he's like, I've learned so much just as him being my husband. Forget the whole pastor family stuff, and the fact, my kids are like my heart. You all know, just when you have a kid, it's just like it's your heart, and the fact that they're being taught under his teaching, that's a huge blessing. It really, really is to me. So.
All right, I'm going to circle back. So Naomi, we now know, has lived in a parsonage. How about the other two? Have either of you been in a situation where you were in a parsonage?
no,
right.
but I lived in Beeson's married student housing.
Hey, wait a minute. I lived in the 80 Pie House with my husband for 4 years, right up here in West Campus. I did.
All right, so this is going to be a loaded question, and it's going to lead first to answer it as a parsonage question, but then a follow-up question. So the other two, you have to listen to the whole thing. So, sometimes we think of, pastors only work on Sundays and Wednesdays. That's a joke. But some people actually think that. If you're not a regular church attender and don't know what your pastor does during the week, sometimes you think that's the only time they're up in the pulpit, that's the only time they work. Just like professors have off all summer. But we know that's not the case, and being a pastor is sometimes a 24/7 situation, and depending on where you live, you might be the only person they're going to call you all the time. So this is a twofold question. The beginning part, I want to know, what are some traditions or weekly habits that have been particularly helpful for your marriage as you have endured what often seems like a 24/7 ministry schedule? How have you developed barriers in your marriage to promote quality marriage and family time? So that's going to be for for sure for Jane Ellen and for Lauren, but taking it, Naomi, to the part about living in the parsonage when not only are they calling your husband 24/7, they also know the lights are on, therefore he's home right now and coming to your door potentially. And I say this from experience, and not me personally, but Doug's parents, both grandparents, were pastors, and they had parsonages when their house was an open door 24/7, so people were coming all the time. Did you ever have that kind of an experience?
So I would say we've been blessed to not have people just knocking on the door all the time. But I mean, we do, like, a lot of times it's more like I need to get in the church. And, we have some funny stories too. And we have a ring doorbell, and it went off at like 3 a.m. in the morning. And it's a couple in our last church. Their adult son was drunk, and we didn't know who. It took us a minute because he had maybe been to church a few times, and anyway, because I don't know, it was pretty funny and sad at the same time. But some crazy stuff like that happens. And in one of our churches, we lived across the street from a hospital, so people would come and want money for prescriptions filled and this kind of stuff. And we even had like a lady that was next door at the church that was next door to ours come to our house, knock on the door to help us to escape her husband, who was abusive, and they went to like a food bank or something, and she was trying to escape, and we helped her away. Like, she was like, he took my phone, he won't let me call my kids. And anyway, so you get some unique kind of stuff like that with people showing up at the door, when they know it's like there's a parsonage and stuff like that. But and so, parsonage life, if you want to talk about parsonage life, it definitely, with the UMC, we've been sent. You go here. Thankfully, we're out of that now. But so, you don't really have a say on what church you're going to, what city you're going to, and what house you live in. For those, not all of them have parsonages, but we've mostly lived in them. So,
Can you set boundaries when you're in a parsonage? Or does the church at least know, please, from 4 to 6, do not call?
Yeah, and and it's
do not knock on the door.
Growing up a pastor's kid, I've answered the phone for some crazy things growing up, but we don't have a house phone, so they could just call his cell phone. And at night, honestly, I put mine on airplane. His is off, and so I don't know. That part hasn't been too bad, but when you're right next to the church, sometimes you don't have that privacy. Or Matt was grilling one day and went inside, and the flame shut up, and I was like, go out there. He went to put it out, and you hear somebody on the other side of the fence say, everything all right in there? You're like, oh, my word. Everybody sees everything. So, but, I mean, there's perks to having a parsonage. If something breaks, and you don't have to pay for it to get it fixed. And, you don't have to pay rent and all that. So.
Did you turn the lights off? Just turn the lights off at night? Turn the porch light off, turn them all off.
Yeah, I mean, we're probably not one to leave the front porch light on. No. So,
all right, Lauren, you want to answer? Is there a way that you help to set boundaries for your family so that mealtime is your time? I mean, just for the sake of your kids and for just for protecting your marriage.
Yeah. So, not just mealtime. I mean, all the time. So I've thought a lot about this question this week, so I'm glad I got to answer. I realize that every time I say yes to something, I'm saying no to something else. So if someone just needs me just to help them do this or do that, and it seems like an easy yes. But then what I'm also saying, well, no to my family, no to my children, no to my free time, no to my husband, no to just downtime, no to maybe something else the Lord's calling me to. And so I just have to be honest with myself, because I love to say yes. Like, that's my thing. I love yes. And I love people, and I love helping people, and I want to do things. But Joel calls it a theology of saying no. I mean, that's like it's sometimes, I think, especially in roles with like pastors and mothers. And I feel like when you have a job that's never finished, and there's always something more you could do, and when people are involved, it's hard to say no. But and when it feels like sometimes I'm being unkind in saying no, it's not. It's me being kind to my family, or kind to myself, or kind to the other person who doesn't need to. I don't need to be at their beck and call. So saying no.
Okay. Jane Ellen? Oh, go ahead.
One more thing. When I say no, I can say then a guilt. So when I say a guilt-free no, I can like say a spirit-filled yes. Like that's the difference of this. Okay.
That's great.
When Davin was in school here, one of his professors, who he really just clicked with, told him that Jane Ellen can't be at everything. So don't expect her to be at everything. And I want to say thank you to that person. That really meant a lot to me, and it kind of got me off the hook because you just can't. You can't go to everything. But as far as boundaries with our family, at the very beginning of our marriage, you know how God just orchestrates stuff, and you look back and you're like, I know God was in that. I didn't do that. But we went to a marriage retreat, and we had to make a poster. It was so cheesy. We had to make a poster about our marriage or something, or as a couple, and it's just like such a cheesy thing to do. But anyway, we came up with this triangle, and I'm sure it's been seen before, but it's like God's up here at the top, and then me and Davin down here, and the closer that we are to God, the closer we are to each other. So we made a pact at that point to always put God first, each other second. When we have kids, we put our kids then, and then the church. And I know that y'all have probably known lots of pastors' families that have not really, they've put the church before their family or before the kids, and then it just wreaks a lot of havoc in the end when your kids are gone. But I'd never, as a mom, I was so passionate about this, I never wanted my kids to think that they were second to the church. Because as a mom, I just felt like those were my little disciples, I was discipling them, So tangibly, we went on a date every Thursday as soon as we started dating. That was like Thursdays in that summer. We started dating. We spent all day together, went hiking, whatever. And then when we got married, same deal. He was actually off on Thursdays of all days at that time, so we just kept it at Thursday because Thursday was such a special day, When we had children,
I'm ruining date night. Sorry, Davin.
When we had children, it was Friday night movie night and pizza. And our daughter is 21, and she's home for her fall break, and she's bringing her boyfriend over tomorrow. And she said, "Can we do Friday night pizza and movie?"
That's great.
So we're doing that with her and her boyfriend. It's going to be fun. But then I will say we're newly empty nesters. So we just sent our baby to college. That's been a whole new thing too. But it's just like you got to keep dating. So we just got back from a Disney cruise, just me and Davin. We are big kids in our family, so it's like constantly fostering that first relationship, because I feel like when you have each other and you have you're tight with your family and you're tight with the Lord, then you can do ministry and feel good about it. I said a lot of no's as well, because like I said, I did not want my children to feel left, because Dad had to leave sometimes and Mom had to take over, but Dad always came back and made time for that. I don't know if that helps.
No, that's great. I think that's very helpful, and I think great for relationships and remembering the importance of this is your marriage, and your marriage reflects the church. And
I will say, just recently we had, again, newly empty nest people say, "Are you sad?" And all this stuff. They come up to you, they want to know how you feel.
No, we
about
went
it.
to Disney.
I was happy because I felt like it was I felt like peaceful about where both of our kids are. So there really wasn't anything to be sad about. But I don't know, I can't remember exactly what you were saying right before that.
I think it's great too, then, the fact that you're building your relationship still
Yes.
with your spouse, regardless. It just so happens that his job is a pastor, but your marriage is
And people
your
have commented on
family,
that
and
through this empty nest. People have said, they notice it,
Yeah.
So.
yeah, and that's who you're going to be. That's who you were with at the very beginning. Then the kids left. That's still who you're with, and by cultivating that all through the kids growing up, and for all of my friends in here who already have children, remembering that the kids take up a lot of work, but at the end of the day, it's your spouse. So anyways, thank you. That's all. Those are helpful. I'm going to, since we now are talking about children, and all of my panelists do have children, I want to ask about, what do you love about Sunday mornings? What is hard for you about Sunday mornings? And is there a way that you can make Sunday mornings fun for your family, for your children? Because I'm assuming oftentimes they're off at 6:30 in the morning because they have that first thing, and you have to get the kids ready for school or for church and feed them breakfast, and they're dressed in their Sunday best, and your hair, you actually have a shower and your hair is made up and you have makeup on because everybody's going to look at you as the pastor's wife. So is there a way or a routine or something that you have done to make Sunday mornings not the worst day of the week for you?
Well, I'm real here. I don't know about you, but we've had some rough Sunday mornings. I mean, I'm sure you all have too. I think Satan attacks Sunday.
Oh, yeah.
Totally attacks Sunday.
Saturday night.
Saturday
You're trying
night.
to sleep.
Yes.
I feel like Saturday night is always my
preparation.
worst sleep.
Even like the preaching preparation too. So take a deep breath and I don't know, be relaxed, maybe allow a little bit extra
Do you get up
time.
earlier? Is there any tricks that?
I feel like the key for me is the night before. So number one, like not staying up too late. Kind of starting to prepare your kids' hearts for like tomorrow's our, we're going to church and it's our day of worship, and just reminding them what's coming, and we're going to get up and this or that. But having everything laid out, like do as much, everybody shower the night before. Like I've even got where I'll take my shower the night before, lay the clothes out, think about food. I don't always do this, but when they were younger, I tried to think about what is something I can already have made, or something that's a treat maybe, or that's just simple and quick to do on Sunday morning, so that you're not, I don't know, just things that will give you more time that don't take up too much time in the morning. Clothes laid out, just everything as ready as possible,
It's hard
And
to
it
do
doesn't-
that.
I mean, yeah.
Like if they're in high school, I will say, like I totally get it when they're younger. But, like I have one that is
Yeah.
always late. So it's gotten to be, even when she's home from college, it's gotten to be where, okay, if I roll in at the 9:15, right at 9:14, right to my little front pew, it's okay. And a lot of times they reflect, don't you feel like they reflect my attitude and my mood? So
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And it definitely gets better. I mean, like now that I don't have babies, it's definitely a lot harder. It is a sacrifice, but you have to remember what you're doing it for. And that's like part of being a pastor's wife is a lot of your ministry is a lot of unseen things. You are supporting your husband, and that's one of the times that you are supporting him by getting the kids to church on your own. It's like a treat if we go on vacation or go home. We have it off Sunday and we're going to church somewhere else, and we get to go to church all together. It's a treat. But that's something that you're taking, and other people at church aren't recognizing that. You're not getting some grand award for getting your kids to church, on time or not on time. Usually I'm not on time, but it's a sacrifice that you're doing, for the kingdom, and you enable your husband to be able to go and be stress free without having to deal with all kids and all that on a Sunday morning. So, but it is nicer when they get a little bit older. It's easier.
Well, Lauren, now, and I don't know, I know this is a little bit more recent thing in your church. It's like fourth service, so it's like 3 in the morning, 1 in the afternoon. So like he's gone all afternoon and all day. So is that a more difficult thing for your children now that, like, forget it, Dad's busy on Sunday, like all day Sunday, or?
Well, so what we adopted a little tradition, I guess a few years ago. The girls have 3 daughters, and it was kind of depressing, like going to church and then coming home, and it wasn't a family day. It's just not. I mean, it's his biggest work day, if you will. And so we started saying, okay, we would go to a 9:40 service, and then come home and make a big brunch, and we'd invite somebody from church that day to come home with us, so they could kind of take turns picking who they wanted to bring. Like it's a hard day for singles, because that also feels like family day. So a lot of times we'd have it'd be kind of fun. Like I'd let them pick. Like you can go invite somebody. You know, so like having little things like that so it doesn't feel like it's empty, or we can still have a meal together and celebrate and feel like it's a Sabbath. And then, so our church is a little more relaxed in what we wear to church. And so back to the first question of getting them ready. Like when they were little, I would always put them in smock dresses because I could. And then the older they got, they could choose their own clothes, which is fine. I would just lay it out the night before. But I've also learned not to choose my battles on Sunday morning. And when my 13-year-old walk out in like a Grateful Dead t-shirt, I just smiled, like, okay, let's go. Like, I was not going to say, you're not going to wear that to church. I just said, okay, great, let's go. And I didn't say anything, and Sweet Joel looked out and saw her, and he didn't say, and no one said anything, and, like, she's never done that again, but, like, I didn't worry about, I cared more about her and knowing that she's never said she didn't want to go to church. And that would be really sad to me if my other kids were like, I don't want to go. So.
Yes.
She wears Grateful Dead, that's okay by me.
She's there.
So choose your battles.
All right, so here's just a funny, frivolous question. Do you have a particular place that you sit in church every single week? Does it change? And then whatever your answer is, why? All right.
I like move around.
Okay.
I generally have sort of an area, but I sit in different places. I always have just kind of sat, like, sometimes I sit in the same place, sometimes I change it. Because everybody's always got their seats they like to sit in. Sometimes I like to, like, oh, I'm in your seat, like,
Yeah,
just, But then you kind of see different people.
Yep.
But
that's good. Lauren, how about you?
So I always sit in the front. We have 3 front pews. I sit right or left, stage left, front, because no one else wants us in the front row. And it also helps me be focused, and I can feel like I can really concentrate on the sermon, and I like it. Except when Joel's not preaching and someone else is preaching, I never sit there. So I'll just sit somewhere else, and that's.
And do you always go to just one service? If you have multiple services, one, or do you go to all of them?
So what I like
Because you
to
want
do-
all the people to see that the pastor's wife is in church.
Oh gosh, I don't care about. I'm very non-traditional pastor's wife. I'll be honest. I don't care what people say. I mean, I let it go a long time ago. So I have a lot of freedom in that, and I thankfully have a husband too who is great with that. Like probably the same professor told him not to, because I don't. Yeah. Anyway. So we have 3 morning services. So I like to go to the middle of the morning services, and I try to get there a little early so I can see people who are leaving, not to be seen, but to literally see them. They're my church family. I want to see them, and I can stay late and see the people coming into the 3rd service.
Yeah,
But I
that's
do
good.
not stay for 3 because who wants to do that? Not me, and I definitely never go back. Yeah, for 3 because I'm too tired.
All right. Naomi, do you have a favorite spot that you sit?
Oh, she's already.
Oh, sorry, you said Jane Ellen, sorry. See, I can't
I'll
keep straight 3.
We've been in 3 churches. So the first church I did what you did. I just moved around. But where we are now, I don't know. Like I sit in the same spot that you do in our church. That's where my husband starts. And so it gives me just a little time to be with him because I'm not really with him at church very much. At our previous church in Pleasant Grove, I sat on the front, but the way we had service was Sunday school service. So I could be with him during the Sunday school hour and, walk around with people. But the way it is now, I'm the front row, so he's mine.
And I think I've heard, Virginia, was it you at some point, like there was some expectations from the congregation that says the pastor's wife needs to sit in the front. Maybe it wasn't you, maybe it was one of the other panelists. Yeah.
If I thought that was true, I wouldn't sit there. Yeah.
Did you ever have that? No expectations of where? Okay. All right, so here, let's see how am I doing. All right, this will be my last question, and then I'll let these ladies also chime in if they'd like. Have you, and this is also another thing that my friend in the book talks about, the need for friendships, your own friend, your confidant, somebody who they know you're a pastor's wife, but they don't care you're a pastor's wife, or whatever the case may be. But did you ever have a ministry couple or even an older ministry wife who has mentored you? So not even just, you can either talk about the friendship thing or just like a really special mentor relationship person. And how did you find that person? So either just a good friend that really I can let my hair down with this person. I know, and I have encouraged and told some of these women, for Doug and I, they were friends that we met in seminary. Well, we went off to different places, so we could talk about anything because they weren't in my congregation. So you can't say, Mrs. Brown is driving me crazy today. You can't share certain things. And we don't need to be that way, but sometimes you just need to share a stress over something that's maybe happening in your family, or when Sunday mornings are horrible, or whatever the case may be, however you want to answer that. Did you have a ministry couple, somebody that mentored you, or a friend who came along beside you, or anything in your role as a pastor's wife that was really meaningful to you, and how did you find that person?
That is a tough question.
I'm sorry, well, you don't have to answer it, but if you have that person, if you have somebody like that
I'll
in your,
start.
okay.
So I grew up a pastor's kid, so I had my mom, and so my dad kind of has a unique, he's retired now, but he had a seminary program in the church that was connected through Southern Seminary, but so he had interns that would come for like a 3-year period, and they would kind of rotate through all the ministries. And so, I've watched my mom for years and years pour into these like seminary wives that she's, had just, right there with her for 3 years, and just the way that she's ministered to them. And so my dad always had like a preaching class, like an early morning preaching class over the years for college students or adults or whatever that came through, and wanted to be in ministry. And so he has like what's this thing called a preacher's class reunion every year. And so he comes back. So over the years, so as we, got married and we're in the ministry, then we will go to that when we can. And, I see the way that my mom has just mentored all those people, but also, so I have her, I can call her and talk to her about anything, and she'll give me advice and stuff like that. But,
And she's been there.
and she's been there.
That's great.
She's been there. So, there's parts of things that, she hasn't really experienced that I have, and that, but she still gets it. She's a safe space. And, but yeah. I also have, as far as like friends, in my last church, I did have, really my best friend. She ended up her husband became the worship pastor. And, that was really a blessing because you can't always, it's nice. I like having friends outside of the church too. Just that you can kind of like let your hair down and just not even have to think about church life sometimes. But it's a blessing when you can have friends in the church too. And don't let anybody tell you that you can't have friends in the church. That's what I would say. Because a lot of people say you cannot have friends in the church. And I really think that you're really missing out on a lot if you think that you can't be friends and be authentic with people. Obviously you have you are your husband's confidant, and you can't, there's certain things that you don't share with people, but you are missing out, because I think some people are really guarded, and, sometimes there's church hurt and things happen, but I think that you miss out on blessings by putting those walls up and not having friends with people in the church. So
I think every church has a different personality too. So like, we've been, like I said, in 3 pastor ministries, 3 different churches, and hurt by people in the first pastorate. I'm not going to lie. It was a small rural church in Kentucky. And, I've always had this desire for close female friendships that I could just like be my authentic self and like learn from them, like I really mean that. That's the kind of thing I've wanted. But I think in your title role, I feel like I've had people at that church, and I've had people recently just take advantage of that. It's like, I can get in good with whatever. I don't even know why. I'm just like a person. There's nothing good to get in with. But I'm just keeping it real.
You know the pastor firsthand and can tell him.
I don't know what they see. I'm just a normal person like everybody else in the church on the same journey, trying to be more Christ-like. But my parents, my husband and I have been friends with my parents the whole marriage we've ever had.
and they've been a great support to us. They were not in ministry like what you're talking about, but godly, and I'm thankful to still have them. They're 88 and 86, and we still have them. But friends in the church, finally, I do have some friends in the church, and I think I reached a certain age. I kind of went over this certain hump called the Big 5-0. I don't know what. I don't know. Like there's several former ministers' wives in my Sunday school class. They might be 10 years older than me. I have a lady at Briarwood who used to be principal at Briarwood. She's in her 70s and such a godly woman. I've talked with her quite a bit, just bouncing things off, life issues. Because I think one thing I want to say is life, just because you're a pastor's wife, life is not easy. Life isn't easy for just a regular human being. So having to balance your life things that you go through in a Christ-like way, and then your church is watching, it's been tough for me to trust people because I have been hurt in the past. But God has given me some good friends now, and I'm really thankful for that. I don't know if you all felt this way. Sometimes there's just a line I can't cross. Like if I'm going through something like really deep, I can't quite get there just to share my dirt completely raw until I'm ready to. I don't know.
Thanks. All right, one thing, so Lauren, do you want to chime in on any friends or mentor?
I think of when Joel was a college pastor in another church before currently where we are now. I really admired the head pastor's wife, and I just went to her and said, "Will you mentor me?" And I think being bold, and if you can identify ladies in your life that you admire.
And a godly person, I think, even, as you're admiring them, I think that's a key thing. Yeah.
Someone that you want to be like, that you admire how she, it doesn't have to be another pastor's wife, but just a godly woman who's ahead of you. I think it's important.
Super. I think that's very helpful, and I hope that you can all glean from those, at least the few questions that I formulated. But I do want to open it up and allow for any questions that you have thought up that you want to ask any one of these ladies. Anybody?
I have a question.
Yes.
I don't totally know how to ask it, but I think you'll understand. How do you all approach feedback related to like a sermon or something along those lines? During, before, after, do you wait till you're asked, what if you got something you really think they gotta hear? Like, you don't want to assume every time you're the one. How does that?
And are you asking for the sake, like if your husband is asking you, what did you think of my sermon, or somebody else?
I got some thoughts about your sermon.
Yeah.
Both. Like, how do you approach that? What works out well for you all? Because you have like a special kind of spot, but you also don't want to like abuse that.
All right, ladies, do you ever give comments on your husband's sermons? To put it bluntly.
I do every week. So,
Oh,
and I try to be encouraging because he beats himself up. He knows when he has done something wrong or misspoken or made an error or just tripped over his word. I mean, he knows generally, and definitely not on Sunday if I have constructive criticism.
So you're not telling him right after your
Correction.
sermon before he goes into the next two services.
Okay, you know what? If I think it's something like he just used the wrong word last
Okay.
week. He used the word barter. He should have used negotiate. So I did go, but hey, I think you should use the word, which is not a big a deal, but I just thought that could help clarify. But if it's like not that I'm like,
Honey, your sermon was way better last week.
well, and he knows that he is his own critic. He also gets a gazillion emails
Yes.
from all people who have their feedback too. So I really try to be diligent, and I really try to encourage him and say things that I liked about it. Also, we go for walks. Like the way we connect, this is really not exactly the question, but this is how I do it. So we go for walks in the early evening when he gets home, that's how we kind of like connect again. And like, I'll tell what happened on my day. He tells what happens in his day. And usually he starts processing like what he's chewing on and thinking through the sermon, like as he's preparing it for Sunday. So he'll like tell me, yeah, this is what God's teaching me through this passage. And I was thinking about using this illustration. And I'll be like, that's a bad illustration. Like I try on the front end as we're kind of chewing through and discussing it, or like, if you're going to tell that story, make sure that like I try to help him on the front end avoid it. On Sundays, I try to just be encouraging after he's done it. And if it's something bad, I wait till like Monday or Tuesday. Just so he's had a good night's sleep.
Yeah.
So he doesn't feel like attacked.
Yeah. That's great.
I think for me, like I know I'm not saying that, please don't say, it's not that I'm saying that you don't respect your husband. I'm afraid it's going to come out the wrong way. He spends so much time on that sermon. I don't spend that much time on his sermon. So it's very difficult for me to, I don't know, like, do you know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know, like, I don't know. I just can't bring myself to critique. That's just me and my husband and our relationship, because I respect his preparation so much. He is more of a preaching pastor. That's his main thing, what he feels. So I know he spends like 16 hours on his sermon. And I haven't spent 16 hours on that scripture. So he does want to know what I think, but I try to give very positive, because I feel like our husbands all take what they say. It's inside of them. They've spent a lot of time on it, and it's personal. And I would never want to do anything to cause him to be insecure about his preaching. Do you know what I mean? I don't know if that makes sense or not.
My mom, she always says to people, your husband is going to be critiqued by so many other people. He needs you to be an encourager, a safe space. To be, I mean,
His biggest cheerleader.
I'm not saying I have never said it. I rarely would say anything, and it would never be anything major. But and like you guys were saying, like if he's doing something, he's like hard on himself. He's like, oh, I really, that or that second service, I really did not do as or whatever it is, and so I mean, if you have a question about the content of it, like help me understand, like I think that's okay if you can say it in a nice way, but I would be real careful to not be critical. Not that I'm saying you were saying but just they're gonna get criticism from other places. So
It's helpful. Anybody else have a question? All right.
I think that's helpful because I think often, like, and obviously our husbands are still in school, but I know mine will be like, okay, so sit down and listen. I want you to listen and tell me all your thoughts.
and that's different if they
Tell you all the thoughts.
I think if they're asking for feedback,
Right,
then,
right.
I mean, do it in a gentle way still. But if they're asking for it, then then you are their helpmate. You are, if they want it, then gently give it to them.
Yeah, I think that's a good. It helps us think through, and I think it's helpful too to be like, okay, is there like processing? Because I'm sure they do process throughout the week,
Yeah.
like what they're gonna talk about, and like going on a walk is a really it's a no pressure environment. It's not like Thursday night, like he's standing up practicing in the living room and you're listening, and it's. I feel like that's a good way to.
It is. It's been really helpful for us.
Go ahead, Evie.
We haven't touched on this as much, but I'm just thinking through situations that your husbands are counseling people in the church. Are those things that you all are aware of? Is that something that's shared? That y'all particularly pray about together, or is that something that he doesn't bring home? Just wondering, is there a boundary? Have you found a boundary to help where it doesn't bleed over, or is it something that y'all just intimately share that as a zone where you both can minister by praying through those situations, if that makes sense?
That's a good question.
I think with Davin, I don't know if anybody else was going to say anything, but I think with Davin, he tries to protect me in a way to not bring home a lot of his burdens, and it's different personalities too, I'm sure. But I think he's already been through it once,
He really doesn't want to come home and have to go through it again. That's just his personality. If it's something that directly that is going to affect me, he'll share those things and we pray about it together. But generally he does like protect me, and then I'm able to smile. If it's a difficult situation, I'm able to smile at that person like literally I have no clue that it's been an issue. Do you know what I mean?
I would think that that's probably an important thing and a confidant for the people that are coming for counseling.
Yeah.
That, you know,
Right.
maybe they, or at least not share a name if it's something just for prayer's sake, but because you will be running to this person and you have to.
Well, and if it's a counseling session, I would say if it's, you know, that would be totally, like, I wouldn't be privy to that information if someone's counseling. But, you know, when there's like stuff going on in the church, I think it depends on you. Like, I know I have friends that are pastors' wives that are like, don't tell me anything. I don't want to know. I don't want to have a hard time loving people, you know, like, because sometimes if you know there's an issue and it's hard to like love those people when you know that like there's a issue. But I think it just depends on what you want. So, I mean, my husband, we talk about things if he wants to talk about it, because I also feel like they don't have many other places that they can go where they have a confidant. I mean, that's what, you know, you are their confidant. You're a safe space for them to be able to vent or just talk things through. I know, like, Matt likes to just, like, you know, if there's an issue, like, let's talk about what is this, like, what do you think about this? How do you think this should be handled? And he really values, like, my input, and we can just kind of brainstorm together about how can we deal with this, or, you know, he has a safe place to share, and it doesn't go past me, you know. I mean, that is important to, you know, if you can't hold your tongue, then tell your husband just to not tell you anything. So, I would agree.
All right. Anybody else? I have more questions in case nobody came up with any, but please, I want to hear from you if you have any.
You talked a little bit about the criticism that your husband receives either on sermons or, you know, just about everything else. How do you protect your family, protect your kids, but also avoid becoming bitter or becoming like, oh, this person just, I can't, like, how do you continue to love your congregation while also protecting your family and along those lines?
Well, honestly, I'm human, so I don't like it when people criticize my husband. I mean, that's difficult just because, I mean, we're our husband's biggest cheerleader, and I really don't like anybody to say something negative about my husband or give him a hard time, because I'm with him all the time. I know his heart behind what he does, and it hurts me that someone would question that, you know. I've not always been perfect at that. Not like side-eyeing maybe somebody in the congregation, but I think with maturity and growing up, and just people are people, and they're going to say things. And then so we have to kind of set the example and love people in spite of that, and hold our tongue in the process. You know what I mean? Like, be that example.
That's good. Lauren, did you have any? Has there any been like
All the things are
people
swirling in
that
my head right now.
come to you because they really want to get to Joel or?
No, they go directly to him. But it makes me mad. I think it almost hurts me worse. Like, I almost wish they would criticize me, which just sounds crazy. I don't want to be, but I'm just like, it really does just, I mean, like, I just so depend on the Lord and like just the Holy Spirit. Just, I mean, I think of the fruits of the Spirit, and I'm like, oh, please give me that, because it could be so hurtful. What was the original? How did you put it? You said,
How do you protect?
how you protect.
Your family?
Okay, so part of, for me, what I have learned is, okay, I recently read somewhere that, you know, the in the Bible, how it talks about we're a helpmate, as a wife. Okay, that's a nice word, but someone, maybe it was Tim Keller, I can't remember, someone translated it as ally. And I've loved that. I've been chewing on that recently, just that whole idea of like, we're allies. And it's like two countries that are trying to protect themselves, you know, against an evil country or whatever. And so I kind of have have viewed myself as an ally. Like what resources do I have that maybe he doesn't have that we can kind of help each other and kind of have each other's backs. And one thing he does not need from me is further just like
Adding fuel to the
yes,
fire.
yeah. I don't need to add fuel to the fire by like keep talking about it, keep bringing it up, and keep like, oh, I hate it when like. I need to listen well, so I've learned like say less, listen more. Really, truly, I'm not just not like the Sunday school pastor's wife answer about pray about it, but like truly, like Holy Spirit, I need you because I don't have it. I really do want to be mad. I really do want to lash out.
But then we can't show that to our kids.
Right.
Like you were talking about protecting the kids.
At the same time, I'm honest with the kids. Like this is hurtful, and so said that, or.
I think the kids, I mean, there are some instances where, like, I don't know, we're probably not always as careful about, I mean, certain things, we're not going to talk about, but they pick up on, little stuff here and there. But yeah, we do try to protect them a lot. But something that, definitely over the years, the Lord is like refining that in me. It's definitely a process, learning how to deal with people that are not kind to your husband. But I try to if there's someone that's done something really mean to my husband, I just try to make like an effort to do something loving to them, just to like make my, like go out of my way to, like, you don't feel like it, but it just helps to like do something really kind. Like, I'm going to talk to you and be really kind, not like being fake, but just like, I don't know, just loving them anyway. Like, there's obviously something going on there, and and I work really hard to, like, I don't want people to be like, oh, the pastor's wife is treating me unkind. She must not, because of the situation. You know what I mean? Like, sure. Jesus loves us despite the way we treat him, and he loved others and died on the cross for so like you said, I'm not perfect by any means. Like, I'm sure we've all struggled with that. You kind of get defensive as your husband, and like, people don't know, like, they don't know the whole story a lot of times. They don't know all the details, and so it's not always easy, but it's definitely a growing opportunity.
And I think it's especially important to protect the children because they're little and they see all this stuff going on. And if you talk about that in front of them, and so and so did whatever, and they get these negative feelings about church and stuff. And Victoria can tell you, one church we were at, there were just some crazy stuff going on, and David and I would talk about it, but we purposely never shared it with them. And then one day, just a while back, I said something about it. She said, well, I didn't know any of that was going on. Well, I never heard any of that. And if you don't, they're developing their perception of what church is. And if they hear all this crazy stuff and you don't protect them from it, then one day, they may not want to be part of church. So I think especially for children, they don't need to hear all that stuff that comes up in every church.
Yeah.
Well, and even just grown-up life.
So go for a walk.
Yeah.
Exactly. Talk about it, not at home around the children.
Yeah.
We do the same thing.
Yeah, that's great. All right, I think
I think the last thing you want as a mom is for your kids to not want to be in church when they leave your household. So if you can think with that end goal, you want them to love the Lord and to want to live for him. Just always keep that as the end goal that you have for them.
That's great, thank you. All right, we probably have time for one more question and then want to allow extra fellowship time unless the workers out there, took all of our snacks. But does anybody have any final follow-up question?
I could ask, so all of us, God has called all of us to different vocations, so some of us might have a full-time job outside the home or work full-time in the home, and some of us might love, all of us love church, obviously. Like some of us might love ministry, I really want to be discipling people, and I really want to be involved doing evangelism in my city, and but we're not the pastors, that's what God has given our husbands, our spouses. So how do you this is obviously a very personal question. I'm how do you bridle your zeal? Or how do you like, let your husband do the role that he's been given to do, while also knowing, like, God has given you, like, I don't believe that God has called me to be a pastor, but I love ministry, you know, and so thinking, we've always, oh, I'm sorry, I'm being very personal. We've worked for a campus ministry together for like 10 and 14 years, and I'm like, oh, I just am grieving the fact that it's going to be separate now. Like, I know, so like, how do you still envision, like, it's his job, but like, you're still doing ministry together? And maybe you don't necessarily, like, I know everybody does it differently, but how do you guys do that? Or how do you think about it?
I think even one of the questions too that I had is finding your role, and some of it is your giftedness that I think, you know, I mean, Caitlin, you are gifted, you know, in your ministry that you currently have. And so obviously, you know, you have that, and some of you ladies, I know Lauren helps out with marriage retreats. And so maybe the question is too, is what's your passion, and finding your passion as anybody would in your own individual church. You know, we want all of our church members to be involved in something, volunteering or whatever. And obviously it's a different role because you're the pastor's wife and somebody might look at you differently. But yeah, is there a way that you are finding that you can participate in ministry and not have it just necessarily be an automatic twofer because you're, but is it just because you're finding your passion or doing what is your passion? Is that?
I mean, I think if you're excited and you want to do it, like, you know, I'm sure the church would be excited about that, you know. But I think it's different for everybody because everybody, like, I homeschool my kids, and so, like, things look different for me. Then I don't just have all the time to, you know, or people have full-time jobs. You know, everybody's in a different situation. But I think something to remember, you know, maybe this may be more the opposite direction, but, you know, like, we have an audience of one to please. Like, you know, our goal is to please Jesus. And so whether churches have expectations of you as a pastor's wife to do a lot of stuff and you're not able to do that, or you know, you want to do more ministry, you know, as long as you are praying about that and, you know, seeking the Lord, and you feel like if that's from the Lord, you know, follow that. Like, the Lord's giving you a passion, it sounds like, to do ministry, and, you know, I wouldn't necessarily try to quench that. I mean, but, you know, you also want to keep your balance on things. If you've got kids and you know, you're just like doing ministry all the time, and your kids you're not giving them the time that they need, you know, that's something to consider also. Does that make sense? Like, you know, so just everybody's different for their stage of life, or if you have kids or you don't have kids, and
It could be also the church that you're in, the expectations of, you know, this church may not want the pastor's wife to have a role, or what if they all of a sudden don't like your ministry? What does that do to your husband's ministry, who was the initial person that they called? I guess that could, I don't know, I just threw a little wrench in that whole question, but.
Right, just weighing everything in prayer and making sure that the direction you're going is completely led by Him. For me, it's different. My passion is music. I went to school in vocal performance, so I'm obviously involved in the music ministry. But again, my kids, training them to love the church and want to love God, you know, love God themselves was more important. But then being a support to my husband, that's more important to me at the time. Now my role is changing now. I'm going to be finding new ways to be in the church and minister in the church. But while my kids were at home, it was that. And it may be different for other people, and that's okay, you know.
Well, thank you again. Thank you. Can you please give a hand for all of my two panelists for coming out tonight? And I really do appreciate you sharing from your heart and from your experiences. And I know it's just something that we all can learn from, even just whether, you know, I'm not in pastoral ministry, but we all will be part of a church, and our roles supporting our husbands. It's an important thing, and if you have children, that's a whole new dynamic that's on top of it too. So I appreciate you sharing your heart with us tonight. So can I close this in prayer? And then please, I can be here all evening. You know, everybody if you need to go home, you may, but feel free to stay as long as you would like. And we have more snacks and whatever to do. But again, thank you. Let's pray. Dear Heavenly Father, you have given us a diversity of roles to play in your service. Many of us are wives, mothers, daughters, doctors, nurses, teachers, businesswomen, homemakers, ministry partners, and more. As we pursue these varied roles, please help us to find our identity in Christ, not in others' expectations. Help us to use the gifts you give us in the places where you plant us, prioritizing the people you have placed in our lives. Help us to accept our limitations and our finitude, avoiding the trap of perfectionism. Please fill us with your Spirit and inflame us with your love, enabling us to love you above all else and love our neighbors as ourselves. And we pray these things in Jesus' name. Amen.